Lewis Hamilton didn't look like himself in Spain, his words even less so. The seven-time world champion sounded rattled, exhausted, almost disconnected as he climbed out of the Ferrari SF25 after yet another tough race day. The tone wasn't angry, it wasn't defiant, it was something we haven't heard from Lewis in years. But here's the twist. Not everything from Barcelona was doom and gloom, and someone, somewhere in the Ferrari garage, is quietly suggesting the tide might be starting to turn. We've all heard the line by now. There's something wrong with this car, mate. It's the worst it's ever been. That was Lewis on the in-lap. It wasn't just frustration, it was raw. But here's the thing. Halfway through that same race, when Leclerc was off chasing a podium and Hamilton was just trying to stay in the mix, there was a stretch where he actually started to find some rhythm. The data doesn't lie. His lap times began to match Charles. Not beat him, but close the gap. Enough to raise an eyebrow. That moment, it might not look like much, but for a driver still trying to find his place in red, it's the kind of spark you don't ignore. David Coulthard didn't sugarcoat anything. He said Hamilton looked punch-drunk, like a fighter who's taken too many hits but keeps getting back up. And honestly, it fits. Barcelona was rough. Team orders had him move over early. He lost a place to a Sauber late. His best quote post-race, "There's nothing else to add. It was terrible." But Coulthard also pointed out something others missed. When the Ferrari started to work, just for a little while, Hamilton looked alive again. Not dominating, not back to his best, but fighting, and that for now might be enough. Here's where things get strange. Despite Lewis taking all the blame post-race, saying it was probably just me, Ferrari boss Fred Vasseur hinted at something else entirely. Apparently, the car did have a problem. Something that showed up late in the race. Something that messed with balance, performance, or both. And no, he wouldn't say what it was. He just said, "You are experienced enough to draw a conclusion." With that classic Ferrari ambiguity. Whatever it was, it hit before the safety car and left Hamilton limping to P6. Still ahead of Russell, still showing flashes, but nowhere near where he expected or needed to be. Something snapped in Barcelona. Max Verstappen, a four-time world champion, isn't usually one to whine about racing guidelines. He races hard, lives on the edge, and rarely asks for sympathy. But after the chaos of the Spanish Grand Prix, even Max had enough. And what he said post-race, it's the kind of thing that could shake the way Formula One handles wheel-to-wheel combat. Things were looking manageable for Max. Not great, but solid. Red Bull rolled the dice with a three-stop plan, and Verstappen was on his way to a decent points haul, probably just behind the McLaren duo. Then came the twist, a late safety car. Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes pulls over, and the whole field dives into the pits. Red Bull had no softs left, just hard tires. Everyone else, softs. And suddenly, Max was a lion surrounded by cheetahs. He lost grip, lost position, and that's when the elbows came out. First came Charles Leclerc, a bit of wheel banging, a bit of drama, but it was still in bounds. Then came George Russell, and this one, messy. Max got shoved off, rejoined in front, and then the call came. Give the position back. Verstappen tried, sort of. He backed off, let George come up the inside, then hit the throttle and clipped him. The stewards let the earlier contact slide. But this one, costly. 10-second penalty, 3 penalty points, and now Max is just 1 point away from a race ban. Let that sink in. The most aggressive, dominant driver of the last 5 years could be forced to sit out if he blinks wrong in Montreal. After the race, Max didn't vent about tires, or the safety car, or even his penalty. He aimed higher. He called out the entire system. What's allowed, what isn't. It's not very natural, he said. That's the biggest issue we have. It's not about one move. It's about the inconsistency, the way the rules shift race to race, steward to steward. Max admitted it sometimes works in your favor, sometimes against. But this time, he felt it flat out betrayed him, and he wasn't alone in thinking it. Something's finally shifted for Yuki Tsunoda. After weeks of confusion, frustration, and dead ends behind the wheel, the Red Bull Jr. has just been handed something that might be his golden opportunity to turn it all around. But it didn't happen on race day, and it didn't happen on TV. This breakthrough was quiet, behind closed doors, and buried in a 2-day test that could prove more important than any race lap he's run this season. Let's rewind to Barcelona. Race weekend? A disaster. Tsunoda found himself dead last on the grid. Not because of some huge error, not because of weather chaos, just pure, inexplicable lack of pace. Afterward, even he admitted, it just drops massively for whatever reason. He looked rattled, like he didn't trust the car, or worse, didn't trust himself in it. But this week, he got a second shot. Red Bull stayed behind after the Grand Prix for tire testing with Pirelli's 2026 development program. And Tsunoda? He wasn't just there to watch. Tsunoda climbed into Red Bull's mule car, an RB19 modified to simulate 2026 regulations. On paper, it's all about tire development. But behind that, there's a bigger story. Before the mule car test, Red Bull snuck in a full testing of previous car TPC session. Same car, different setup. Total freedom to tweak, test, and explore. Something they can't do under normal F1 restrictions or in the tightly regulated 2026 development runs. This was Red Bull finally giving Yuki the time and track space to push without pressure. No grid, no lap times. Just pure discovery. And remember, this is the same car Tsunoda was meant to drive at Silverstone earlier this year, until rain wiped it out. Now he's got 2 full days in Barcelona to figure out what's missing. And maybe, to prove he belongs in that Red Bull pipeline for real, Tsunoda has been honest, brutally honest, about how disconnected he feels in the current RB21. Qualifying? He says he can't find the last tenths. Setup changes mid-session? Still a mystery to him. And it's not like his old VCARB days, where he knew every nuance of the car and could send it without thinking. Right now, he's driving with 1 foot on the brake, mentally speaking. He doesn't trust the rear, doesn't trust the grip. And in a sport where milliseconds mean everything, that hesitation is costing him dearly. But this test, it could be the start of something different. Barcelona didn't just leave tire marks on the track, it left bruises. Max Verstappen walked away from the Spanish Grand Prix with a penalty, a damaged result, and something even worse, a sense of injustice. And now new footage is circulating, unseen by most viewers, a slow-motion replay that might explain why Max left the circuit more annoyed than usual. It was a wild restart. Verstappen on hard tires, everyone else flying on softs. Max made a mistake through the final corner, the car got loose, and suddenly Charles Leclerc was right there. Down the main straight they went, wheel to wheel at nearly 300 kilometers per hour. There was contact, no doubt. Leclerc slipped past into turn 1. Max was forced wide, and the fight was over. The stewards looked at it, talked to both drivers, and their verdict? Racing incident. No one was predominantly at fault, but Red Bull's helmet Marco saw it differently. Very differently. Speaking after watching a segment on Red Bull's own service TV, Marco claimed the footage clearly showed Max being rammed. No gray area, just contact at top speed and no punishment. And that, Marco says, really got under Max's skin. If Verstappen was already annoyed after the Leclerc incident, what happened next took it to another level. Enter George Russell. At turn 1, the two made contact again. Verstappen ended up off track, but somehow stayed ahead. The team radio crackled. Verstappen was ordered to give the place back. He did, sort of. At turn 5, as George came through, Max struck back. Another touch, more tension. And this time the stewards dropped the hammer. 10 seconds and 3 penalty points for Verstappen, enough to drop him from P4 to P10. And more critically, he's now just 1 point away from a race ban. Yes, Max Verstappen, 1 step from the sidelines. After the race, Leclerc was asked about the straight-line skirmish. His response? Calm, maybe too calm. He said he expected Max to fight hard, that he might have done the same in reverse, that it was tight, but no big deal. Just another intense scrap in a sport built on them. Max? He didn't say much after the footage surfaced, but Marco made it clear. This one stung. The penalty, the points, and what felt like a double standard.